The heat hit me before I even made it halfway down the driveway. Thick and choking, the kind of Florida afternoon that feels like walking into a wall. But what really made my blood run cold was the sound. My niece's fist slamming against the inside of the garage door, her voice tearing through the smoke that curled beneath the gap. The door was locked, tighter than a bank vault, thanks to Patricia's new safety mechanism, the same one she'd bragged about at last week's HOA meeting. Compliance, she called it. I called it a death trap. And that day, with a 12-year-old girl trapped inside, that door might as well have been a tomb. You ever watch a place fall apart in real time? I mean really crumble, right before your eyes, over some rule that was supposed to keep everyone safe, but only ever made things worse? Let me back up a sec. See, I was a fire marshal for 15 years, and I knew what those locks meant. I'd warned them, warned Patricia, the board, everyone who'd listen, that if you put compliance over common sense, somebody was going to get hurt. But they didn't care. They just wanted control. That garage wasn't just some afterthought, either. It was the last piece of my dad's handiwork still standing, the last place Emily felt close to a grandfather she never knew. This was more than fines. This was about family, legacy. If I failed, it wouldn't just be memories that went up in smoke. But Patricia, she wasn't interested in memories. She stood at the end of the driveway, clipboard tucked to her chest, snapping orders at the security guard like a judge passing sentence. Noncompliance means immediate penalties, Mercer. Rules are rules. The smoke still hung in the air from Emily's forgotten birthday candles, mixed with the gasoline from my father's old mower, the one he'd never let anyone touch. It all just about made me sick. Patricia thought this was a game of signatures and fines. She didn't know she'd just locked a kid in a box with one way out, and that was if someone like me could get there fast enough. You're making a mistake, I said, voice steady as stone. For the first time, she paused. That lock wouldn't pass a single state inspection. You just broke 3 federal safety codes before lunch, Patricia. She didn't even blink. This community doesn't run on your opinion, Mr. Mercer. It runs on compliance. My jaw clenched. My name's Daniel Mercer. I built half the fire safety protocols in this county before you printed your first violation. But she didn't want to hear it. None of them did. What gets me is, every time I step into that garage, I smell my father's aftershave. I see Emily's chalk drawings, crooked suns and misshapen hearts, still scribbled on the wall. That's not a storage violation. That's a family's last inheritance. And Patricia, well, she saw it as nothing but a code to enforce. When that lock slammed into place, it echoed like a prison door. You know what I mean? Some things just stick with you. My brother's death left Emily in my care. I'd promised to keep her safe, no matter what it took. I'd be damned if an HOA president with a superiority complex was going to take that from me. Patricia thought she'd won, clipboard hugged tight, walking off like she'd conquered Rome. I just stood there in the driveway, watching the sun glint off that lock, hearing the slam again and again in my head. She had no clue what she'd started. The next morning, I walked into the HOA office. You could smell the fresh paint and smugness from the door. Community integrity through compliance. That's what the sign said. There was Marcus, the vice president, hunched over violation notices, smirking at another resident's crime, a kayak left out on the dock. They didn't care about safety. It was all about control. Each notice, each fine, another shackle on a neighbor's neck. People were beaten down, too scared or too tired to resist. Mr. Mercer, Marcus said, without even looking up, you'll be receiving your official fine in the mail. Garage misuse. Unsafe storage. He said it like he was ordering a sandwich. Unsafe. I asked, voice low. You just locked a fire hazard into place. He hesitated, a flicker, but I caught it. He knew. He just didn't care. I left, heart pounding, vision narrowing. This was bigger than me and Emily. This was about an entire community living under Patricia's thumb. She'd built a machine that punished people for trying to live. But you know, fear only works until somebody calls it out. And I wasn't just anybody. I knew the law better than any of them, and I had the scars to prove it. A neighbor messaged me on my drive home. Another violation, thinking about selling. That's when it really hit. Patricia was going to bury everyone under her rules. I pulled into my driveway, stared at the locked garage, at Emily's faint chalk hearts. I gripped the wheel. No way I was letting her grow up like this. This wasn't just my fight anymore. That weekend, the HOA hosted their Family Day, the usual PR stunt, balloons and folding chairs, kids running under a white canopy, while Patricia presided over it all like royalty. I hung back, watching. Fake smiles everywhere, but parents clutched their phones tighter, whispering about new finds. That's when I spotted Mara Jensen, one of the board members, standing apart, shoulders tense, staring at the ground every time Patricia spoke. I made my way to the refreshment table, struck up small talk. Mara's hands trembled around her lemonade, voice barely a whisper. "Rough week," I said, and she just nodded, eyes darting to Patricia. I'd seen that look before, rookie firefighters knowing their captain was wrong, but too scared to speak. She wanted out. She wanted help. But fear had her in a vice. That night, a thick envelope landed in my mailbox. $1, 500 fine, unsafe storage. Patricia's signature in red ink at the bottom. I stormed into the clubhouse, slapped it down on the table. "You're endangering lives. That lock violates state code." Patricia didn't even flinch. "Community standards, Mr. Mercer. You're not exempt because you used to carry a badge. Badge or no badge, I know the law. And when your rules put a child's life at risk, you're running a liability factory, not a community." Behind me, I heard a cough, an older resident holding his own violation. His eyes met mine. He wasn't alone anymore. Patricia slammed the meeting shut, but the damage was done. People had heard me. Cracks had started to form. That night, I walked the neighborhood with my flashlight, documenting locks. The HOA's upgrade was a disaster. A single-point latch bolted through the emergency release. In a fire, nobody could get out. I took photos, my stomach twisting. Years ago, I'd seen the same setup. 3 people died. That landlord cried ignorance. Patricia had no such excuse. "You shouldn't be looking at that," Mara said, appearing at the curb, eyes darting to a security camera. She looked scared, but she didn't stop me. I snapped photos, knowing I had what I needed. Back home, I called Alvarez, my old partner. "That's criminal exposure," he said. "Not just negligence, criminal." That confirmation hit hard. This was law, not just a personal beef. Then it happened. The smell of smoke, the snap of wood, shouts of fire. 2 houses down, the same lock trapped a neighbor's son inside their garage. I grabbed a crowbar, jammed it into the gap, and wrenched with everything I had. The metal screeched, paint blistered, but finally, the door gave, and the boy stumbled out, coughing and wild-eyed, into his mother's arms. Cheers, tears, a miracle, or just dumb luck. Patricia arrived, trying to spin it. Isolated incident. The system worked. Nobody was buying it. Not Mara, who stood pale near the back. I held up the twisted lock for everyone to see. "This," I said, "is what almost killed him." No one spoke. Even Patricia stayed silent. The next morning, Mara showed up at my fence, face drawn, hands shaking. "They made us vote," she whispered. Patricia forced the lock policy through. Said liability was lower than letting people do what they wanted. If I spoke out, I'd lose my position, my daughter's tuition. But I kept records, emails, meeting minutes she told me to delete. "If I give them to you, promise you'll protect me and my daughter. You've done the hardest part already. You told the truth." She shared her files. It was all there, smoking gun after smoking gun. Patricia had gambled with lives and thought she'd buried the evidence. Now, I had everything. Photos, code violations, Mara's testimony, and soon, a neighborhood behind me. I spent the day gathering statements, showing neighbors what those locks really were. Once they saw the truth, fear cracked, anger took over. That evening, we met at the Alvarez driveway. People brought chairs, candles, stories. A widow fined for leaving oxygen tanks in her garage for her husband's recovery. A father punished for a child's playhouse. We signed a petition for removal of the locks and Patricia's resignation. When the next HOA meeting came, I walked in with my binder and the charred lock. The place was packed, standing room only. Patricia tried to keep control, but when I slammed that lock down and opened the binder, photos, codes, witness statements, there was no denying what she'd done. "These locks violate State Fire Code 69A 60.081. Class C felony in the event of injury or death." Then Mara stood up, folder in hand, voice trembling but clear. "Patricia told us to delete records, ignore code compliance. I saved everything." She laid her evidence on the table. Patricia's mask broke, the crowd erupted. By the time the sheriff's deputy showed up, Patricia was done, escorted out, all power gone. The morning after, the air was lighter. Contractors came to rip out every illegal lock. Patricia's resignation hit the community email. No more red blazer, no more threats. Mara dropped by, returned the original files. You made sure they couldn't bury it again, she said, eyes glistening. Emily came running, asking if she could play in the garage again. I smiled. Go on. Watching her spin and laugh in that old garage, her grandfather's legacy, made every fight worth it. I knew more battles would come, but this time, nobody in that neighborhood would face them alone. That lock sits on my shelf, not as a warning, but as proof. When people stand together, even the strongest walls come down. If you've got a story of fighting back, or if you've ever faced down a bully with a clipboard, drop it in the comments. Let's hear where you're watching from. Because trust me, this was just one battle, and I want to know how you'd write the next chapter.